All right. Well, hello and welcome. I am super excited that you just said yes to sitting down with me. This podcast has been a passion project of mine for years now. And no matter how many interviews I have, no matter how many guests I have, I get just excited about every time
Ah,
somebody
that's
says,
good.
yes, I'll sit down on your podcast and share a little bit about myself with all of your listeners who I have no idea who they are. Um, so
Oh,
I'm
that's
gonna
good.
give you the mic and give you a chance to introduce yourself to the listeners. If you would start by sharing your name, where you're from, and what you stand for.
Oh, the last question. The first two were so easy. The last one. No, my full name is Kenya McGuire Johnson. I was born and raised in Denver, Colorado. But I do not live there now. I'm actually based in the Chicago area, cold Chicago, although it's getting better. The weather is shifting. The weather is shifting. And as far as what do I stand for? Gosh, Keyshawn, this changes like today. No, I think
Okay, today is fine.
ultimately I just stand for peace. I mean, I think inner peace, inner peace, because I think we keep trying to have all this external peace without and bypassing inner peace. So my point is, let me see how much I can support others in their inner peace and do the same for myself. So
What are some ways that you're supporting yourself with tapping into that sense of inner peace?
yeah, I am very deliberate in this space now, after having so much difficulty with
Mhm.
that. I think at this point there's some obvious things. There's the kind of, okay, yes, I do meditation. I do practice, doing, some a little bit of yoga. I actually do more of what's called Payo, which is a combination of Pilates and yoga. So there's a kind of my physical areas of getting to the inner peace, because there's a stillness that kind of physically has to happen for me to get in my stillness. But it's really about just, me constantly working on listening to my intuition, paying attention to, what is my soul calling me to do right now, and
Mhm.
not my ego. And there's a dance that our ego and our soul does. So I'm constantly trying to get the ego just to calm down a bit so I can get into the soul. And that gets me there.
Can you tell me a little more about what that dance looks like? Because when you said that, I felt a little chill, like the ego and the soul doing a dance. Because we often hear in spiritual conversations or conversations like this where people might talk about quieting the ego, or in some cases killing the ego, silencing the ego,
Mm,
but I've never heard it described as more of an integration between the ego and the soul. Can you talk a little more
right.
about that?
Yes. And that's why I do say dance, because our ego is necessary. Like, we are human beings, and that's it's our ego that gives us the human
Hmm.
space of this. So it's important not to ignore it. It's important not to defeat it, because
Hmm.
it will just rise louder
Right.
in very non-productive ways. So I was trained by a spiritual mentor years ago to think of your ego two ways: to think of it as a dance where the soul is the lead.
Hmm.
So the ego is still a part of, the activity, but the soul is leading the dance, and the ego follows more. Also thinking of when the ego is starting to get really loud and taken over, and that's the chatter, that's the anxiety, that's the worry. When you're getting it constantly in that space, that's the ego kind of taking the driver's seat. And
Mm.
so telling the ego to go in the back seat and let the soul be the driver.
Mm.
And so the ego is still there, it's still
Hmm.
present, it's just not leading the journey. And that's kind of, for me, I have to, when I feel the chatter, feel the anxiety, feel the worry, um, I know, okay, I'm allowing ego to be the leader right now, so let's get it back in position, and lean into the soul. I mean, I'm making this clear and pretty in talking, because in action it's different.
Oh yeah, it's a
But
completely
that's the
different. Yeah.
but that's the theory, and
That's the
not even just
theory.
the
There we
theory,
go.
but that's the practice.
That's the practice. It is. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, yeah.
Agreed. I mean, I think when we think about a lot of these spiritual practices, I think the terminology that we use around them is really important. Is it is a practice, and practice doesn't make perfect, it makes progress. And so the
Mhm.
more that we progress in our practices, the more perfect we might feel, because we feel like we're more in alignment. We feel like we're more connected with our true self. We feel like we're more in that rhythm, in that dance.
Mhm.
And it's when we're out of practice, just like with a physical practice, you know when it's been a long time, when you've been on your yoga mat or when you've been in a Pilates
Yeah.
class, your body is like, girl,
Right.
you out of practice. You know what I'm saying? So your
Yes.
soul, so to speak, and your spirit will kind of give you that same like, excuse me, it's been a while. Let's take this kind of slow. You know what I mean? Versus
Right.
like sometimes we push ourselves into these practices because especially if it's new. You know, I remember the very first yoga class that I went to was with a sister friend of mine who I've known for years. And it was, you know, a time in my life where I needed something different. I needed something new and something special and something that was a little bit challenging. And she
Mm.
said, okay, come with me to this yoga class. And I'm thinking, okay, cool. I was an athlete in high school. I know how to stretch. You know, I was a cheerleader. I could stand on one leg, whatever. I got balance.
Yeah.
Little did I know, you know what I mean, what I was walking into. And little did I know that my flexibility and my physical strength and balance didn't mean diddly squat in this class,
Oh,
because I had to tap into that ego. I had to tap into that at the time that felt less like a dance and more like a battle, you know, that was going
mm.
on mentally,
Mhm.
where one part of myself was saying, you can do this. This is easy. And the other part of myself was saying, but what if you mess up and everybody laughs at you? Like all these things were going
Right.
on, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Can you tell me a
Absolutely.
little bit about maybe some of your first experiences getting into some of these practices and what that felt like for you?
I mean, honestly, for me, it's an evolution, right? It's you're constantly evolving. So this all started for me back in 2009 is when I really kind of was like, okay, so now what is meditation? And so now what? What are we doing? So I've always believed in the power of mentors and the power of community and not attempting to, I'm not a person that really hops on YouTube a lot and tries to figure it out
Mhm,
like that. I might look at it
mhm.
and kind of investigate, but ultimately, I really do better when I have some level of human show me the way or talk
Right,
to me about this.
right.
So, a lot of mentoring, a lot of people telling me how they have been able to integrate spiritual modalities in their own lives so that I could see it and hear about it in more everyday, realistic ways as opposed to always just reading about it
Mhm,
or social media on it. So yeah, I think that I just, I am the type of person that once I do get interested, I'm like, let me just try it and let me make my mistakes and then go
mhm,
ask my questions.
mhm.
And so yeah, it's been a process. And for me, I did a big spiritual retreat back in 2009. And that was when I was really introduced to this whole even idea of a modality, of a spiritual modality. What does that even mean?
Right.
And understanding that simply going for a walk, simply listening to sounds at certain frequencies is a modality to getting tapped into your intuition and your spirit. So,
Right.
and a lot of mentorship to get me started and
Right. Right.
trying.
I like asking folks that question. And so far in the 4 years that I've been hosting this podcast, in the 30 plus guests that I've had, no one said, well, Keyshawn, I learned this when I was a kid at school.
Right.
No one said
Right.
that.
No,
That has
no,
not
they're
been
not
anyone's
way.
answer so far. And
No.
it's so interesting to me that we're experiencing this, you know, awakening, this second education, this mentorship in our adult lives at a point where we're like, man, if I had known this in like even the seventh grade
Yeah.
would have been helpful. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
right.
So we're
And I
learning.
think now people are, I mean, it is a very different world. I mean, I see certain, more privileged school districts, where yoga is a part of their
Mhm.
daily, circles and that meditation and calm and all of that, those apps are being used. So I'm really curious to see how those children, because a part of me almost feels like we need to get this at the second, like that's the second half, that's kind of the point
Mhm.
because there's a level of falling down and a level of triggering that actually needs to kind of help us so that we're really invested
Mhm.
in it.
Mhm.
But then again, I don't know, maybe because that's just been the way that I've done it. I'm curious to see, but you're right. We're not, I mean, for the most part, absolutely, we're not taught this
No,
stuff.
no, we're fine. And I mean, that's a great point, is that I think coming into the world the way that we did, I'm, a 77 baby. So we came into a world where we played on metal slides and
Right.
walked home by ourselves at 7 years
Right.
old.
For
And
like 2 miles,
we're
3 miles. I'm like,
like,
I know I walked a long time. I'm like, yeah, my mom let me walk that far in second grade. What?
yes, exactly. We had the commercials at 10 o'clock at night. Do you know where your children are? Like, that was the world that we came up in. And
Mhm.
so I think when we got to that stage in adulthood where we recognized, okay, we've just been kind of like trucking along and pushing through and powering through a lot of stuff, that we got to a point where, for me, I kind of hit a wall where I felt
Yeah.
like, okay, I
Yeah.
can't keep getting by
Mm.
this way. I deserve to actually like embrace life and enjoy life in a new way. And
Yeah.
that's how I started to really lean into these practices and lean into recognizing the value of well-being and the value
Absolutely.
of wellness and the value of rest. Like we've talked about several times in
Yeah.
our conversations on Clubhouse. It's like,
Yeah.
these were not things that were necessarily introduced or even modeled for us as kids. However, by the time we really needed them, it was like, well, here you go.
There you
Here's it.
go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, same here. Same exact, I mean, same stories. It wasn't really till I mean, I'm 49, so it really wasn't until I was around 37, 36, 37 that it hit me that I actually could choose my life. Like literally the idea of choosing your life, I did not even know. That wasn't even a concept that no one had ever said you get to kind of choose your life. It was like, this is what you just do.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, I think that's still a predominant factor, particularly for our generation of Black women, is this having to remember that you actually have choice. So yeah.
Yeah. That we have choice, and that if our choices look different than our mothers or grandmothers who came before us, that's okay. For
Yeah,
us to be the point at which our lineage shifted, it's okay for us to be the pioneers in that way, or for us to be
absolutely.
the generators of that change. And that was something that I had to recognize about myself. As I'm the oldest of 5 kids.
Oh, you're the
And
oldest. I didn't realize you were the oldest out of your
yes,
siblings.
I'm the
Oh,
oldest. Yes, I'm the oldest. So there's
nice.
4 girls and 1 boy, and I'm the oldest, and my brother's the
Wow.
baby. And
Wow.
so I learned, early on, that I needed to lead by example, and that there was a certain expectation that fell on me. And,
Mhm.
it wasn't until I was much older and more mature that I recognized that it wasn't just about leading, for example, as far as like education and things like that, but really leading by example, not only for my siblings, but also for my parents and my elders who came
Yeah,
before me, to show them this is another way that we can choose, like you said, to be able to choose our life and to choose what our path looks like. And it's okay to shift the narrative and to change the
absolutely.
paradigms of our families.
In
So
fact, that's the
mhm,
part of the purpose. Like that's part of why we are here is
mhm,
to make the shift. And I think that concept, as Black people particularly, is so foreign. The idea of choosing your fate, choosing how you practice your faith, choosing. I mean that still I think is a really, it's a fundamental issue that we have to as a community begin to reckon with, is understanding our faith how we need it to be for us, and
mhm,
remembering practices that were taken away from us and stripped from us and hidden from us, and that in fact we there's a plethora of our history and of our ancestry that has given us tons of tools
mhm.
by which to tap into our power, and we've been so cut off from that now we believe it's actually out to get us. And so I think it's yeah, that gets me to a whole nother discussion, but it's a really important. I'm really passionate about that, and I don't spend a lot of time in my work doing that quite yet, but in my own personal practice I've really had to work very hard to make sure I understand the fullness of how I can tap into spirit.
Absolutely. And for me, it feels the more that I dive into these practices and the more mentorship, because I, like you, I can pick up a book and read it and conceptualize it and digest it, but having an actual teacher, a guide, a mentor just deepens that connection for me. And one of my spiritual mentors, shout out to Queen, she, she walked me through experiences that, had I attempted to navigate them on my own, I know that I wouldn't have gotten to the point where I am today, And
Absolutely.
so that is something that I, like you said, specifically choosing my faith and choosing the way that I practice was something that I didn't believe that I could redesign or customize,
Yeah,
or personalize.
yeah, yeah,
So I really do see that there is something that's happening in our community in particular, where it feels less like new age stuff and more
yeah.
like the way we did things all the time,
that that's
like.
that's what's so like mind-boggling as I've been learning. It's like, wait a minute, this isn't new. This isn't progressive. This is ancient. This is how it all began, So it's just been mind-blowing to, uncover these modalities and really understanding, just the harm that has happened to us as Black people beyond what we even understand the harm to be. So yeah.
Yeah, agreed, agreed. So tell me a little bit about how you're introducing or sharing or offering your own mentorship and guidance around these practices to your community.
Yeah. So I'm an artist first. I always kind of lead with that, meaning I'm a singer and a songwriter, but that creative soul, I think, is how I begin the conversation, how I for myself had to begin my own healing. It was music that kind of got my attention in my like breakdown. During my breakdown back in 2008, 2009, there was a lot of things happening, but I wasn't doing anything creatively. And it was creativity that really opened the door. So I would say that my music and just being a creative is probably the first channel. And that's how I have branded so much of myself. But it's just been in the past couple of years that I've been more public and doing more deliberate coaching and healing work, specifically with Black women, and more specifically 40 plus Black women. Although that's starting to shift a little bit too, because as I'm just learning more about what my skills are and the things that I have to offer, I realize that there's a bit of a bridging of generations that I feel like I need to tap more into. But I do health coaching. I usually start because I think that people are safer hearing kind of like, oh, I want to lose weight, or I want to change into a more plant-based or whole food, or I want to get my nutrition. And so that's another area where I will lead into helping people, and mostly women, is with that. But it's kind of like, once I get you in the web, it's like, okay, what we got to really do though, because this really don't have, I mean, it's about your food, but this is about something way deeper. And that's usually how I'm able to begin to start having conversations more about, mindset and, why do you think you're in this space? What is making you, choose these different things? And then unpeel that onion a bit and start to get more into the spiritual. And I do let clients know that this is, if you are not wanting to get into a soul space or purpose or spirit space and only want to focus on just food and nutrition, then I'm probably not going to be the best person to work with you. And my retreats are not going to be the best experiences for you. And because in my idea of this is that, and my philosophy or whatever of this, my practice is that, the mind and the body and the soul are all very connected, and you can't just focus on one and leave the other behind. So that's how it's been. It's been pretty organic. I mean, I have learned along the way
Mhm.
what works, and it's funny because it's not until much later that people are like, oh, now I see why it's like, yeah, we got to go way deep.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds, I mean, that sounds very similar to, my approach with my clients. They see, oh, you coach small business owners, and you are a business consultant, and you help people build businesses, and it's like, yes, I do. And within the first discovery session, before we even get to talking about a marketing plan or
Right. Yep.
strategy, we're going to uncover the real.
Right.
We're going to uncover the root. We're going to uncover the person that's behind this business. And what
Absolutely.
is exciting for me is to see, like you said, that aha moment, that light bulb moment where they say, oh, that's the
Yeah.
reason why I've had so much turnover. That's the reason why I've
Yes.
had such a hard time. Oh, that's, it ain't got nothing to do with that. This is about my mama. You know
Right.
what I
It's
mean? Or
about
this is about a
my mama.
breakup. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Or this is,
This is
I got some
about
whole
my
other,
mama.
I got some whole
Yes.
other stuff that I
Yes.
haven't uncovered, that I haven't addressed, that I haven't even
Absolutely.
explored,
Absolutely.
because that holistic approach, that mind, body, spirit integration approach is something that is often overlooked because people are
Absolutely.
looking just at the result. They
Yep.
want to get to the result. Just get me to the end game. Get me to the finish line.
Yeah.
And, as at being a person who does this work, from your own experience that you can't just go from point A to point Z. You got to go through
Absolutely.
every little marker along the way.
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
shortcut.
And when I started, I have a master's degree in counseling, but that was, and there's no but to that. I was really focused in more higher ed, and I still do higher ed, where I work with students. And so I would say that's where I kept my hat on. But then when I started getting back into my music, I was having such rich experiences with different mentors in music. And, my career was moving so fast and really well that I had a lot of artists come to me to say, oh, how did you get on this, radio station? Or how did you get, this producer, blah, 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 blah. And so I actually started doing artist development coaching. And it was there that I really started realizing, oh my God, like I gotta really talk about their mama right now, because I was thinking we were gonna be able to stay in the space of, okay, this, you set up this, for this business, for your music, blah, blah, blah. And it was like, no, we can't even go there because you're stuck. And I knew, because of my counseling background, I knew where this was really coming from.
Yeah.
And so it was there that I realized I was going to have to do a more holistic way of coaching these artists in building their business. And so just like what you just explained, and I found that that's where I felt even more my fulfillment and felt like things could shine more,
Yep.
was when we went in those spaces. And so that's what kind of carried me over to now, not just working with artists, but really, working with people in their health. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, when you have an interaction with someone, a potential client, or maybe even an existing one, where you come up against that kind of resistance that says, well, I'm not ready to go there, or I'm not really interested
Mhm.
in that, is, being able to kind of step back and say, okay, well, maybe this isn't the space for you, because your approach includes the whole person, not just these little fragmented parts of people's experiences. So I can feel
Yeah.
that. I can feel
Yeah.
that. You mentioned briefly your retreats, and I
Yeah.
know that I love retreats. I feel like I've been going on retreats of various kinds. I mean, up until, COVID, at least
Mhm.
once or twice a year. There's
Oh,
like a
awesome.
certain organization that they would do a retreat annually here in
Mm.
California, in Malibu, for like 3 days up in the mountains. And transformational experiences is what I've had at retreats. And so anytime I see, more often now, thank God. When I first got into this wellness industry, I tell you, I felt like it was me, myself, and I, just
Yeah.
a little brown dot in a whole sea of white, and just wondering if there was anyone else out there like me. And
Right.
now there's just an abundance, specifically of Black women, that are out here doing this healing work.
Yeah.
When I see, a retreat, especially an international one, my heart just
Yeah.
gets like bigger and bigger and bigger. So I want you to tell me a little more about your upcoming retreat, and, take up as much space as you'd like.
Ah, thank you for that. And I'm so glad that my goodness, that you have been retreating for years, because I think that that's an area that I wonder, about brown and Black communities. Do we really understand what that? I mean, we hear about the church retreat and and the marriage retreat to the church and those things, but just these independent self ones. So it's really good to hear that. But yeah, I have always been very passionate about just curated experiences. And I think that's the artist in me. Like, I'm not going to just do a show and just sing on the mic and then leave. Like, we want to experience. We want you to come in. And the moment you walk through the door, you feel like you're ready for this. And so that's always been a passion of mine. And I think being in education and working with students, you're constantly curating spaces to allow them to learn and feel safe and ask questions. And so workshopping and retreating has always been just a passion of mine, but it's always usually been more academic. But this retreat is in Costa Rica. So yes, it is international. And my boutique health wellness service is called Finding Your Voice. So it's a Finding Your Voice, mind, body, and soul retreat. And it's exactly what it says, mind, body, and soul. It is specifically for African American or women of African descent. They do need to be at least 40 years of age, although I do have one woman who's 37. So I said, okay, we will let, if you're a little bit under that, that is fine. And the point really is for what you mentioned earlier, transformation. That's really what it's about. And I targeted this population mainly because honestly, that's who I am and that's who most of my clientele are. But I also think that Generation X particularly, although millennials are now in their 40s, hitting 40, but Generation X, we have this heavy conditioning of fit in the box.
Mm-hmm.
And our ability to choose our lives, like we were just talking about, we're just learning that is a possibility. So the retreat is really about transformation, and from the physical to the mental, and then the spiritual. And so each day we have a specific theme planned. Every day there's yoga and meditation. That's a part of each day's thing. Everything, we're all grown ass women. So if you don't want to participate, that's fine, but it is at your disposal. Every day there are spa and massage and those more what we understand relaxation. But every day is also a time for us to peel back some layers on our physical wellness is the kind of first full day. The second full day, and the dates are April 28th through May 3rd, in case people are wondering. But the second full day is really on relationships. And that's another really passionate area that I have, that I'm being pulled more and more to start talking about relationships, and not just self relationships, which is a given when you're doing this work, but love relationships and how they impact our healing. And how they're a critical, actually a pivotal part of our individual healing, being in romantic relationship. So we'll be peeling back relationship and manifestation and cultivation of that. And then we have a full day full of just rest, where we don't have anything scheduled. You go, you do, you sleep, you eat. I don't care, whatever, get at the beach, whatever, really committed to your rest. Although every day, every afternoon is committed to rest too. So these workshops are only morning workshops, and then we do lunch, and everything is plant-based eating, but it's gourmet plant-based eating, so it's not just eating salads and leaves. Right. And then your afternoons are full of rest, and then that one day is all rest, and then the last day is a spiritual pathways day. And by then I saved that for last, because that is where we have to feel our most safe. That's where we really need to be willing to get in these vulnerable spaces. And so, and it's really an introduction to help women begin to be curious about what we were just talking about, what are other ways we can tap into soul and into spirit outside of religion, outside of formal doctrine. How can we hold our religion and still use modalities and nurture ourselves? So that's, what that is. And then, they fly away the next day. So I'm really excited for it. I had done some virtual retreats when COVID first started, and the biggest thing that women said is, I want to see everyone in person. So the moment we can be in person, let's do it. And, Costa Rica, honestly, that was a completely spiritual, I have certain aspects of, I can hear and feel when my ancestors and when spirit, God, everything is telling me to move. And so it's very it's they don't play around, because it's not like a, oh, what, it's like a, you need to go to Costa Rica, and I'm like, wait, what? Like, what? I don't know anything about how to start a retreat in Costa Rica. But that was the message: Costa Rica, Costa Rica. And there was just a divine order of events that happened that led me to Imaloa Institute, which is in Costa Rica. That's where we'll be hosting it. And the resort, I know you're familiar with it. It's a health and wellness. They specifically only host health and wellness retreats, and it's only one retreat at a time. So we will have the whole space, which is a whole campus, waterfalls. It's all, I set it up so that all my accommodations, because we're grown women, are single accommodation. So you won't be sharing rooms. You get your own individual space. And I'm just insanely excited. So at this point, we're only taking 15 women, and we have 4 spots left. So yeah, that's where we're at. So we're about, I guess, almost about 6 weeks away from it. So I'm totally excited. Well, 6 weeks at the time of recording this, but I'm not sure.
Right. Yeah. No, that's exciting, and I'm so happy for you. And yes, I got a chance to chat with the folks at Imaloa Institute, and they came highly recommended. And it's interesting because a friend of mine and I were planning a retreat in January of 2020, and then
And then
outside got canceled. And so that was that. But it remained, on my radar. So when I saw, I was like, oh, she's going to Imaloa. Yes, that's going to be so dope. So it's exciting. And when I think about my retreat experiences, as a kid, the first retreats I went to, they were church retreats, they were revivals, revival experience where it felt like less retreating and a whole lot of reviving, you know what I mean? So
right.
It wasn't until, entering adulthood that I experienced my first all women's retreat. And actually I come from a huge family, and there's predominantly women in my family. And so for a couple of years, the women in my family would gather for a women's retreat, and there was like 25 of us. And so we were doing our own, retreats and our own circles and our own rest days. And it was something that just kind of became part of our norm. And so I've had the opportunity to be a part of yoga retreats and meditation retreats and silent retreats. Now,
I said, that's another level. I've thought about them, but
okay,
it's another
that's
level.
another level. Yeah, silent retreat in Joshua Tree, California.
Oh, wow.
10 days of Vipassana.
Wow, 10 days. Ooh, girl.
I'm pretty sure I just levitated home after that. Pretty sure I could move time and objects. I'm out here in the matrix at day 7. It was deep, and it was very intentional as well. And what I like about creating containers for Black women in particular that are rooted in well-being and the practices of wellness, there's so much value to that, because we are still an underserved community of human beings. And so we often get overlooked, or even if we do plug into some of these other retreats, we're still the minority. And it's something that just can be limiting when we think about the transformational experiences that we want people to have, that when you look around and you see yourself, you see your experiences, you see other women who walk in the world who have had some of the same microaggressions, some of the same overlooking, some of the same traumas in some cases that you have. It just helps to kind of peel off those layers of armor that we have to walk around with in our world. And that's when you can watch a woman literally transform in front of your eyes. Like those are like the coolest experiences about being able to just hold space for people.
Absolutely. Well, you just said it beautifully. And I really hope that the women who are attending understand exactly what you just said, that this is a curated, not just a space, but an actual curated space for you to let the armor down. And I do think that women, particularly 45 plus, I would say, have never been given permission slips. And to the point that I talk to some women when I do info sessions who literally still even giving themselves permission slips to even think about considering going to this was difficult. Hearing stories of women like, but how can I spend 6 days to my, away? Like just not even understanding that in fact, you have normalized to not even consider curated space for yourself, unless it's in the fashion of, getting lit and kiki and wine but and I do think that's another part. We're gonna have fun in this retreat. That's a really big part. Every evening I have dance planned, and music. Obviously I'm a musician, so we're not going to be able to go without having some music a part of all of this. But to understand that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Like we don't have to all just be in heavy packing of our triggers. We can have that, and then also have space for joy and fun and relaxation, and that we have very whole, full lives. And just reminding women, the retreat is less of me teaching, just me facilitating your remembrance. It's really, you have it, you already know all about it. We're just so disconnected. We need those spaces to remind us of who we are. And so that's really what the retreat for me is.
Yeah, especially when you think of oftentimes the only opportunities that we Black women in particular create the space for healing is when it's urgent. When it's an
Yes, in
emergency.
crisis. Yeah,
When the
right,
crisis is already sunk in,
right,
the illness
right.
is already taken over, we're like, "Oh shit,
Absolutely. Oh shit, right.
I need to take care of myself. I need to take care of myself." And it's like it's a trauma response. It's an emergency
Absolutely.
response versus the proactive self-care. Let me get the preventative, self-care. Let
Yes.
me get ahead of these things so that I can, like
Yes.
you said, remember these practices and remember these experiences and remember these tools that I've kind of collected dust maybe in the corner because I didn't even know they were available to me.
Right.
I think that's the part that's valuable. And what's also cool about creating, like you said, these curated containers for Black women is community, is
Yes.
being able to connect with other women who say yes to themselves, to say yes
Yes.
to well-being, to say yes to healing, and to be able to see, like, I see you, I see you, I see
I
you, I
see
see
you.
you, and I feel seen. That's
Absolutely.
for me, that's the sauce. That's the
That's the sauce. That's the sauce. And that's, the women who have signed up, that's been one of, I always ask them, what was your final, like, what made you really want to do this? And it's like, I get to be with other women. Like, I'm going to meet other women like this. I mean, everybody has their specific, I need to rejuvenate. I need rest. But 99% of the time it's always also, and I get to be with other women. So yeah, that's a really powerful, and as Black people, that is our tradition. That's one of our modalities
Mhm.
is the collective.
Exactly.
So yeah, so I'm really looking forward to it. I'm just talking about like, I was funny. I was telling a friend of mine yesterday, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to come to my retreat. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm facilitating it. So I gotta,
Yeah, it's gonna be
but
dope.
yeah,
It's
I'm
gonna be
excited.
dope. It's gonna be
Yeah.
dope. We're gonna switch gears a little bit before we move into the last segment of our time together.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
before every guest comes on the podcast, I like to send out a little questionnaire. And what I like about my questionnaire is that I ask people questions that they often don't get a chance to answer. And so one of the questions that I ask is I recognize that we all have a story to tell. And I believe that one of the reasons why I do this podcast is because I think that everyone's story can serve as a source of inspiration or education or empowerment for others. And I asked the question of, what is one thing about yourself that most people don't know?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you had a great questionnaire, so kudos to you, because I was like, oh yeah. I have said on the questionnaire, I am an educator, and I've mentioned this on here now, and it's so funny because so many people, I present myself in the social media world as just more artist and wellness and this, but I'm also actually have been in higher education. I'm an administrator. I manage student development and career development for undergraduate students at a university here in Chicago called Rush University. And those students are all students seeking careers in medicine, nursing, physical therapy. They're all pre-med, pre-nursing students. So that's, a lot of people don't realize I do that, and that I'm actually also the director of diversity, equity, and inclusion for the College of Health Sciences. So I have a very pretty, and on faculty, and I've been on various faculties. And so I know a lot of people don't, I think my family is like, wait, when did you go back to school to even get like what? Like it's just not something that, but yeah, that is a big part. That's how we pay mortgage and
I know. She's kind of a big deal, guys. Okay. She's not just changing the lives of Black women. She's also a songwriter and singer, and she's
yeah.
also on faculty, and she's also
Yeah.
running things. So I love that. I love that. My another question from this is if you could reside anywhere in the world, where would you live and why?
Yeah. So this is a really urgent thing for me right now because I'm ready to get in that place. So for right now, it's just somewhere warm, 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 warm. I miss. I know that my soul is like, okay, we done 50 years of the cold. You're from Colorado and live in Chicago. So right now, honestly, I've been saying like Florida, Georgia, because I still would probably remain in the States, but or potentially somewhere out of the country. I'm still investigating, but just somewhere warm. I need heat, sun, water. Water is another massive factor.
Yeah, I feel
Yeah.
you. I do appreciate that I live in Long Beach, California.
Girl. I mean, I love California. If I could afford California, I saw your Instagram, your $8
Girl.
a gas a gallon. So this is another reason why I cannot live in California, although everywhere is going to be probably ticking up to that. But yeah, I think I somewhere sunny
Somewhere
and
warm. I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that. One thing I like to do is I do a lot of visioning and manifesting and what I call like dream casting. And sometimes I imagine, what my life would be like if certain things were to happen. So one of the questions that I like to ask is if you woke up tomorrow morning with $100 million
a
in your
million
bank
dollars.
account, what is the first thing that you would do?
Yeah, I put this, and this is, I'm not even going to wait for the 100 million, but I have, my family has land in Georgia, and yeah, I'm building and doing, either a family compound, a retreat space. I mean, this is something that I'm actually really passionate in. I'm a manifester as well. I'm really big on, speaking things because it holds frequency. And that's how we can, energy is like the biggest part of what tapping into these different realms and power is energy, and sound is a big part. So yeah, I would go and start building
I love
on the
it.
land.
I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So the last half of my podcast, I like to play a little game called Complete the Sentence. And so I'm going to give you a couple of sentence prompts and you can complete them however you'd like, take up as much or as little space as you want.
Okay.
So the very first one is I know I'm fed up when.
I know I'm fed up when I just shut up. Like I get real when I'm real fed up, I go into silent, like I can't even. I can't even. So I know that I've hit a point if I can't talk.
I hear that. I hear that. How
Yeah.
about I know I'm happiest when?
Hmm. I know I'm happiest when there's a sense of calm, but also when my life is like, I mean, this sounds so nerdy, but when there's order. Like I am a creature, so my moon sign is Capricorn. So I need, I'm a thinker, and order. It doesn't have to be, routine or like Virgo energy where it's like perfect. Not like that, but there has to.
Oh no, I'm familiar with Virgo energy. I got a lot of Virgos in my family.
I said not to make fun of my Virgos. I love you, but I do need methodology, and that's where I find my joy when I know I have a sense of, I guess, control is probably there, but just there's a calm and an ease in that. Yeah,
I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that. Shout out to all the Virgos. We love y'all.
we love you.
The last one for complete the sentence is I know I've made an impact when.
Mm. Yeah, I know I've made an impact when people, and I think I had mentioned this in maybe the questionnaire, is when people feel that they are their highest self. Like if I've been able to play a role in helping you recognize your highest frequencies, like I love that. I love when people step into themselves. And really, they'll want to give me flowers. Like, this has nothing to do with me. This is you trusting the process, and then allowing yourself to really show up for yourself. So that's what I know.
I like that.
It's powerful.
So the very, very last thing that we do together is it's a little bit of like a mini visualizing meditation. So I want to just invite you to find a comfortable position for your body. And if you'd like, you can close your eyes and take a deep breath in through your nose and a long breath out through your mouth. And I invite you to visualize yourself in a time machine. And stepping into this time machine, feeling safe and comfortable, we're going to take a trip all the way back into the past. And when the time machine stops and you step out, the first person you see is your 16-year-old self. What do you say?
Oh, wow. There's so much more. There's just so much more to who you are. I think I had such a limited idea of who I was. So I think I would just say there's just so much more to you. Not so much in the world too, but to you. So much more. Yeah.
So we're going to take a deep breath in and a long breath out. Stepping back into that time machine, feeling safe and comfortable, and going all the way forward. We don't know how far, all the way to the end. What do you want to be remembered for?
I think, and this changes for me because I think about this. I want to be remembered for as someone who lived out loud and in a vibrant space, so that others understand their own vibrance. I do feel the more vibrant I can live, the more others can not necessarily dote on me, but see that I too have that. So I hope I can leave that energy behind. Yeah.
We're going to take one more deep breath in and a long breath out. Coming back into the present moment and slowly blinking open your eyes.
That's such good quote. Gosh, Keisha, you give therapy during your podcast interview.
A little bit. So the last gift that I have for you is I've been working with this Oracle deck of E since I first started this podcast back in the day when I was recording from the front seat of my car. And this is a deck of 52 cards. They're super fun, super lighthearted. So I just want you to pick a number between 1 and 52.
I gotta say 11. That's
11.
like my number. 11.
All right. So the message off of number 11 is bring it. Bring it, Kenya.
Okay.
Bring it. Okay.
And it's so funny because I was gonna say a different number, but my soul's like, no, you need to pick 11. And I'm like, really?
So, yes. So yeah, the message for bring it is, wow, you are brave and fearless these days. Even if it doesn't feel that way, you are being called to take off your armor and leap. Today is the day to call fear out as the wimpy imposter that it is. It is time to go for it.
Wow. See? That's why I said, listen to that voice, because I sure enough was going to say 6. And it's like, no, you're not. Say 11. I'm like, really? I don't know if I feel that. But there we go.
There you go. So there it is.
I receive it. I will, because I think as I'm getting closer to the retreat and the land and all these things, I'm like, So
bring it.
Okay, I'll bring it.
I bring it. Well, awesome. I have enjoyed this conversation, as I enjoy all of our conversations. And I just want to say thank you again for saying yes to being a guest on my podcast. I see the work that you're doing, and I'm so inspired and just feel privileged to be a part of your expanding community. And I'm so grateful and and proud of you just for standing in your purpose in such a bold and audacious way. This work
Mm,
is no small thing, and you are creating containers for Black women to heal, which is
yeah.
a powerful, powerful thing that you're taking on. So
Keyshawn, thank you so much. I mean, I told you the first time I heard your voice on Clubhouse, I immediately was like, I need to know her. I need to know her. And so this has just been so beautiful to have this kind of full circle, to be a guest on your podcast and just to be doing other things with you and discussion. So I appreciate you, and congratulations to you. You're doing such amazing work yourself. I'm gonna need to talk to you about your business coaching, because I'm like, her branding is so beautiful. Like, how's everything so is like so organized. So I love it. So thank you.
my
Thank you.
pleasure, my pleasure, my pleasure. So enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll
Yeah.
be talking to you later on.
Yeah, I know. Tonight. All righty. All right.
Okay,
I'll talk to you
have a good
later.
one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And bye.